it's early, hopefully that everybody's had a chance to go through the buffet, and I know that we're drinking coffee at a record pace, is what the people at the casino told me, that they may have to send out for more coffee. I'm Joe Hurd from the Blair County Chamber. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to our Chamber's nonprofit legislative breakfast. And this is, I believe, the 8th time we have done a legislative breakfast. And it's the largest turnout that we've ever had for this event. We've always had good turnouts. Today, we have a great turnout of nonprofit businesses and even a couple for-profit interlopers here. We always have a couple for-profits that tell me that I say, "You're not a nonprofit," and I get the same response. Well, we didn't make a profit last year. I don't think, for some reason, I don't think they understand the concept. But we're happy to have everyone here. Our committee of nonprofit businesses puts this event on, and that committee is just an outstanding group of people that have stayed on top of the important issues. They put the questions together that are asked to our elected officials, and we are, and I've checked on this because I ask all the time, to my colleagues at chambers throughout the state. To my knowledge, we're the only chamber of commerce that has a committee that is dedicated strictly to nonprofits. And I don't know why more don't, because certainly the nonprofit community is a viable community everywhere. But we're very happy to be able to rally our nonprofits to help them as they face many of the same challenges, sometimes more of the challenges than their for-profit brothers. So again, I think we're probably also the only Chamber of Commerce that does an event where a Democrat questions 3 Republicans. We haven't figured out a better solution than that. So, what are you going to do, huh? So Donna Gordy will again be our, I don't know that we've ever had anybody except Donna as the moderator, because she, and keeping her on task sometimes can be a little bit challenging as well, because I have a list of the questions, and every once in a while a question will come up and I look at it, where did that question come from? So we'll see how that goes. But for the first time since we've been doing this breakfast, we also, thanks to the technology upgrades at the Chamber, we are actually taping this event today. We've had a lot of nonprofits say, well, we can't bring everybody to this breakfast, but we have people in our office who would love to hear what the elected officials have to say about nonprofits. So we also have a YouTube channel. So our specialist, Brittany, our digital media manager, will be videoing this morning, and we will put this on the Chamber's YouTube channel so that anybody who would like to go, maybe you want to go back over and say, I can't believe that Lou Schmitt said that. Yeah.
I can't believe it either.
Didn't mean to pick on you, Lou, but yeah. So that's something that will hopefully be something that a little extra that people can access. Again, we're delighted to have our elected officials who are not new to anyone. State Senator Judy Ward has been with us for quite a while. She was here when, as a state representative, and has been here as a senator for a few years. And State Representatives Gregory and Schmitt have also been great friends of the chamber. All three of these elected officials are members of the chamber, and so we're very proud of that, and we work very closely with them on so many things that are important to the business community. So we're delighted that they will take their time with everything else they have going to be with us. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce again. Oh, I'm sorry. Holly Keller.
What?
Is that what you're pointing to?
No,
It's our sponsor.
Oh, see.
Not to forget.
Why they let me do this, Holly? Well, I wanted to acknowledge Holly Keller, who is the chair of the Chamber's Committee of Nonprofit Businesses. Holly has done a tremendous job, but beside Holly is Jody Cessna of the Central Pennsylvania Community Foundation, who is this morning's sponsor. So Jody, you got some podium time, and I've got a hook.
That's okay. I will make it short because we have more important things to talk about. But I was going to brag about the chamber and this committee that we have for the nonprofits, because it is so important. And for decades, I have said that nonprofit is a tax status, not a business plan. And that is what the chamber believes. They value businesses that we have. So I would like to just tell you a few things about the Central Pennsylvania Community Foundation. I have the pleasure and honor of being the executive director. I've been there for 24 years, and it is an organization that I dearly love. We have been able to help over 800 nonprofit organizations. We have provided over 1,700 scholarships. We will be providing a couple hundred more in the next couple of months. So next year we will hit that great number of providing over 2,000 scholarships to our young people. Through those 27 years that we have now existed, we have provided over $22 million in grants. We are currently managing and administering over $32 million in assets. So we have efficiently and effectively managed over almost $55 million, and that is from this community. So we are just so very proud that we have such an amazing, generous community that supports all of the great works that our wonderful nonprofit organizations are doing. I would like to thank the legislators. I think I can speak on behalf of all of the nonprofit organizations that we do greatly appreciate all the great works that you are doing, and that you do listen to us, and that you do come and talk to us each year and allow us to ask you the questions that are most pressing to us. And last but not least, I think I'm in the same boat that everybody else is in, but in case you know somebody who wants a job, we're hiring. So thank you. The Central Pennsylvania Community Foundation is thrilled to sponsor the breakfast this morning. So thank you very much. Looking forward to hearing some great things from our legislators.
Thank you, Jody, and thanks to the foundation for their sponsorship this morning. Now, just like my mother. Anyway, Dawn Gordy has, as I mentioned, has been our questioner, and so she will get us started this morning. I can tell you that the questions were not submitted to the elected officials in advance. So these are not ones that they've had hours and hours to ponder over and come up with the answers.
Or make their staff research.
Yeah. Oh, it's starting already. Donna, it's all yours. It scares me to even say it.
Thank you, Joe. And I do want to acknowledge, I'll say the good things first. I do want to acknowledge Joe. It is because Joe has worked in the nonprofit world and he understands the value of the nonprofit businesses in this community and what they contribute, that it was his idea to create a committee of nonprofit businesses. So we are indebted to that, to Joe for that. And Jody, thank you very much for your support of this committee from the very beginning, and of so many other of the nonprofits and everything in the community through the foundation. We're very grateful for that. So yesterday, when Joe and I were at a meeting together, and we talked about this morning, we had kind of agreed I was going to self-introduce, and he says, well, don't forget the sponsor. And I said, yeah, and it'd be nice to acknowledge Holly as the chair of the committee, too. So I get here this morning, she says, yeah, I think I should do the introductions and acknowledge you and so forth. So he forgets the sponsor, but he did remember to introduce Holly. You never know with Joe and me how it's going to be. So. And to the Democrat-Republican thing, I consider all these folks friends. I've known them for a number of years in several different capacities. I do not always agree with them politically, but I do consider them friends, and I am very grateful that they have come to this breakfast year after year to be here and hear from the nonprofits what we think is important and share with us what they are up to on our behalf, as well as the rest of their constituents. So we'll start with an easy question. What committees in the legislature do you each serve on? So State Senator Judy Ward.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Donna, and it's a pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure to be with all you folks, and there's a really nice crowd today, and I thank you all for coming out to hear what we have to say. I chair the Aging and Youth Committee in the Senate, and as Holly Keller knows, I've been very active in that committee, and they have a lot of struggles and issues and concerns with the pandemic. So I've worked a lot on nursing home and long-term care issues. I'm the vice chair of the Education Committee, the Finance Committee, I'm on Health and Human Services, Intergovernmental Operations, Law and Justice, and the Rules and Executive Nominations Committees.
I serve on the Insurance Committee in the House. I serve on the State Government Committee, which I'm the secretary of that committee, which it sounds impressive, it's really not. We have meetings and I sign a bunch of papers that I don't read, basically. And then I'm on the Transportation Committee, where I chair the subcommittee on railroads, and also on the Appropriations Committee.
And I'll just acknowledge, very grateful for the work that Lou does on those committees, because they are some of the busiest committees, and his commitment to those committees, going down to Harrisburg at times where I don't have to. I just want to acknowledge your work on those very important committees. We're lucky to have him on those. So the committees I serve on, gaming, labor and industry, tourism, and what is probably the most important to me and the most important to my constituents in the 80th District is the Ag Committee, and the opportunity to speak on behalf of my farm families in the 80th District has proven to be very, very important to those folks. So I would also just want to acknowledge that I created a caucus. In the House, we create caucuses, and the Senate, I assume, too. But I created a caucus, and it's called the PAL ARC, because I didn't want it to be the ARC, knowing what the ARC means to Blair County, but the Pennsylvania Legislative Addiction Recovery Caucus. And I chair that caucus, and I have about 15 members that have joined me on that. I previously chaired the HOPE Caucus, which was the Heroin, Opiate Prevention and Education Caucus, but my personal experience had nothing to do with heroin or opiates. I believe that any addiction that we can address, it's not just about heroin, it's about all substances out there. So I created that one, and we look to do good things with that as well. Long answer, short question.
All right. This time I'm going to start with State Representative Lou Schmitt, and then go around. As a state legislator, how would you describe yourself to the nonprofit business community? A supporter, an advocate, a legislator in need of more education on nonprofit issues, or a legislator not aligned with the issues and goals of nonprofit businesses? And please elaborate.
Definitely not the last. I would, as a legislator, I don't really pigeonhole myself too much. I don't think, well, I'm pro this or anti that. I look at my job to work on behalf of people I represent, to help people, to improve their lives, no matter what industry they're from, no matter who they are, what they do. So I don't really think of myself in those sorts of terms. But I certainly have been supportive of the nonprofit industry, supportive of legislation that benefits them. And I've done my best to try and help them when they come to me for help, when they need my help on issues. I am always in need of more education, it seems, on just about every issue. I'm not an expert. You know, we handle millions of things, it seems, as legislators, and so many issues come across our desks, and so many people want our attention on so many different things. It's impossible to be an expert on all of those issues. There are some issues I know better than others, but I always am being educated every minute of every day that I do this job. And when that stops, I'll stop doing this job. I intend to keep learning up until the minute I walk out the door and no longer do this job. So I work very hard for the people I represent, and I'm devoted to them, and I care about them, I worry about them. And so anything I can do to help anybody, whether from the nonprofit sector or anywhere else, that's my mission as a state representative, and that's what I do. So.
Jeff?
I consider myself an advocate for nonprofits as well as a supporter. I don't think we can get to these positions, at least not in Blair County, without having been on boards for nonprofits and participated in nonprofit organizations. It's just not possible. As an advocate, I would just bring real-time examples. Yesterday, meeting with the Tyrone Township Board and their fire department. Judy's office was there as well with Michelle Ivory, who's just such a great resource. My goodness, our staff does such a good job for us. Judy and Michelle's amazing. To meet with them and tell them what they could do to reach out to foundations in Blair County because they need help to buy a new fire truck, a $317,000 piece of equipment, because the truck they have now is too large to get around the roads that they have. And so for us to be able to sit there with them and tell them about all the foundations in Blair County that they could reach out to, that's real-time stuff. So your education of me is very good. It should never stop. But also realizing that there are people out there that are looking for money that don't know what they can do. So perhaps that's part of the education that could take place, because these fire department folks, the ability to get that money, I've never been to Tyrone Township. Let me tell you, the rural of the ruralist, Silicon Valley area. So maybe that's something else to consider about how to educate folks in Blair County about what they have available to them because of the work that you do. Thank you.
Oh my, technology and Judy doesn't get along. I would consider myself an advocate and a supporter, and always, again, to dovetail off of my colleagues, I mean, we don't know what we don't know. So, the opportunity to have a meeting with, any group that wants to bring us up to speed on what their situation is and what their needs are, always appreciated. Our doors are always open. Venues like this, to be able to come in and speak and understand some of your concerns is always very helpful. I believe that nonprofits in our community are the safety nets of our community, and you all play a very vital role in that. So we're grateful to have you. I know you have so many challenges. It makes my heart heavy because you have so many challenges and your jobs are so difficult right now. They've never been easy, but they're most difficult now. So any suggestions that you have, any opportunities that we have to make even some little piece of that better, we're more than happy to do that. So thanks.
Thank you. And I do appreciate that they all acknowledge that they need to learn. And I think that is important for every citizen to understand. You know a lot more about certain areas of your work, of your avocation, and so forth, than any legislator or other elected officials. Laura Burke is here, for example. When you have something that you think people need to know, write them a letter, send them an email, invite them out to your province, have a that. One other thing I forgot to say in the introduction, I'm going to say it now. Join the chamber if you're not already a member of the chamber. If you are a member or involved with a nonprofit business, whether you're staff of that nonprofit business or you serve on the board, we would welcome you to get involved with the committee. And something, I can't be at a chamber breakfast and have a microphone in my hand and not say, consider sending somebody to the Leadership Blair County program. How many people in here are alum of the Leadership Blair County program? All right, quite a few. And I think it is a great program, and you can learn a lot about the community and learn about some of these processes and stuff. Okay, back to my script. A local business leader calls you complaining to you that they are being inundated by nonprofit organizations seeking donations or other measures of support. What advice do you give them, Jim?
I sent him to Jody. I mean, obviously, that business owner is not in tune with what you all are doing. I'm not sure that I've ever gotten a call from a business owner asking me that kind of question. If you are hearing from business owners, or my colleagues are hearing from business owners about being inundated, please let us know. But as far as where to send them, the first name I always think of is Community Foundation, Jody Sesson. Thank you.
Judy?
Yeah, I think I would agree. I've never had a call like that. And I would say maybe some gentle understanding, letting people, explaining about nonprofits and what they do in our community, I think would be in order. And to maybe get involved and meet with those people to see really what their issues and concerns are, just like we do as legislators.
Thank you. Lou?
I've never received such a call. You receive, but it easily could happen. I had a woman call me the other day and said her toilet's been running for 2 months and she needed my help. And I thought, okay, I'm going to troubleshoot with this woman. Did you jiggle the handle? She said, yeah, it didn't work. I said, how long has it run? She said, 2 months. I said, that's a long time. And she said, well, I have another problem. I said, what? She said, it's rocking when I sit on it. And I said, well, are you sitting still? She said, I said, well, is it rocking you or are you rocking it? Because that's a different problem. But having said all of that, I would ask the person, first of all, if they have the resources to contribute to all of them, then give to all of them, number one. Number two, if there's something that's near to their heart, if there's some issue that a nonprofit deals with, some area that they really care about, I would say then if you have to prioritize your giving to that area. I know that with inflation, now wages are not keeping up with inflation. People have actually less purchasing power. And I know that that's had, from what I hear, some impact on giving to nonprofits and by donors. So people do have to prioritize. But I would say, look, if something is near and dear to your heart, then prioritize your giving to that nonprofit. That would be my advice.
I would only add that reaching out to Betsy at United Way would also be a good suggestion. Correct, Betsy?
That's right.
You're very welcome.
All right. So, like anyone, sometimes nonprofits might be unrealistic in what we're asking of our legislators to accomplish. In what ways might you think that we are being unrealistic in our ask of you? Jim, I'll start with you this time.
Would you repeat the question?
In what ways are nonprofits unrealistic in their expectations of what legislators can provide? You can fix a budget, right?
Remember the formula, right, guys? 102, 26, 1. Well, I'm of the opinion, having worked a lot in sales and marketing, that you don't get it, you don't ask. And we don't know what you want unless you tell us what you need. And so let's start there. Never be afraid to ask. One of the things that we may get into conversation-wise here is, Jim, Judy, Lou, what can you do about our staffing issues? What was population growth in the United States last year? -4%? I mean, the ripple effects of that are real. I have an 18-year plan to fix this. It's an 18-year plan. I tell young people, you all need to have more sex. So, I mean, other than Adam's running a time, sorry, Adam, I embarrassed you. Because you're in that category. So, you know, the ask is not the issue, of course. Please ask for what you need. But being able to fix issues like staffing is one of the more frustrating that I feel as a legislator. And what can we do to come up with solutions to that? It's a very difficult question because there are paying positions in Blair County right now that if I'm up to date with the numbers, there's about 1,500 open positions in Blair County that we can't fill. I hope I'm answering the question, but there's not a lot of easy solutions to some of the things you might ask for help on. Thank you.
Judy, how are we potentially being unrealistic? Just leave it on. And watch what you say to Lou when it's on.
I gotta watch what I say now.
You know, you all are dealing with some very real issues and no easy answers. We all are rank and file members. We can advocate for things. We are not, you know, we're not the decision makers that are making decisions about where the money goes. We can advocate, and we're always happy to do so. But we just, you know, leadership and the appropriations staff and the appropriations chairmen in the House and the Senate, really, when it comes down to it, they make the decisions. And I always encourage people to meet with the appropriations committee staff or chairman, so the appropriations people can understand their issues and concerns as well. I think your advocacy groups in Harrisburg are very powerful, very helpful. So I would encourage you to work through those. But we do need to know what your needs are. We can't make promises. All we can do is advocate for you.
I get a lot of unrealistic requests from, not just from nonprofits, but from everybody, it seems at times. And they're not intentionally unrealistic, it's just that I understand now, having served in this position for a few years, how things work in Harrisburg and how things work when it comes to appropriations. I mean, I'm on the appropriations committee. One of the issues I have being on appropriations is when you're on the appropriations committee, everybody thinks you have the $41 billion checkbook. I don't. I know a little bit more about how things are budgeted and where money goes, and I have access to the chairman of the appropriations committee a bit more because I serve in this committee. But part of my job is when somebody comes to me with a request, that's where the education goes in the other direction. And I say, okay, look, here's what I see. Here are the obstacles I see with regard to this request of yours. This is what I think is possible. This is what I think is not possible. And so I can guide them and get them to a place hopefully where the request becomes something that's more feasible, that's more practical, that I can actually help them with. And that's part of me educating. You know, I was a lawyer for 31 years before I was elected, and I thought I knew how things worked in government. And then I always say that I expected the worst, and it was worse than I expected. But there is a process. There is a legislative process. There's an appropriations process. And a large part of my job is to educate those who come to me for help, so that I can guide them through that process and help them as much as I possibly can, and have them understand. One of the things that's hard, one of the hardest things is to explain to people why you can't help them. You know, this isn't possible for these reasons. And some people are willing to accept that. Some people tell me how worthless I am and hang up on me. But that's the job. But I always work with them to at least, if I can't help them, get them to somebody that can help them. If I can't help them, of course, help them. And if there's nothing that can be done, to explain to them why what they're requesting me to do just simply isn't possible.
Thank you. So here's that employees question. Finding and keeping good employees is a struggle for all businesses, and sometimes even more so for nonprofits that are somewhat limited, perhaps, on their pay scales and so forth. Do you envision a time when state government might incentivize people to go into nonprofit work through various programs? Would you consider introducing something? Judy, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I think that's a fabulous idea. I think that's, like I said earlier, you all were struggling with challenges that are just unbearable. My heart just breaks for you every day. I think that's a very good idea, and I think nonprofits have to be a bit more creative as well with staffing. Maybe it's flex staffing or flex time or sharing positions or just some creativity in what you do, because I think the way we've always seen it is not going to work now that people have been working from home and all of that. So maybe it's being more creative with your position. But I think it's a fabulous idea. I'd be happy to support a bill that move forward that would consider that.
Being a litigator, I always have to come up with some evidence on it. So I kind of looked into the issue and did a little bit of research, and it looks like, first of all, the increase in service demand for nonprofits in Pennsylvania, the top two needs, housing is up, that demand is up 17% since COVID-19 began. Utility assistance, the demand for that's up 19%. And 87% of nonprofits experience negative financial impact due to COVID. I'm actually surprised it's not more than 87%. But 79% of the employee turnover that you're seeing in nonprofits in Pennsylvania is due to the inability to offer competitive salaries. That's the number one obstacle that you face. And that's followed by, there are a few other factors, vaccine policies, access to child care, and stress. So I don't know what you can do about salary competition, but I think if you create a work environment for your people that's as positive as possible, if you take the people, your good employees, and you train them, and you show them how dedicated you are to them. Well, look, working for a nonprofit often it's a calling. It's not necessarily a job. People do this. And they work for certain nonprofits because that's where their heart is. So, honor that with them. I was at the Hollingsburg Veterans Home yesterday, and they were dealing with the same issue. How do we get staff in to help? We can't find staff. And being funded by the state, they really can't offer bonuses and increase salaries across the board. They just don't have that flexibility. So, if people need hybrid work, if they have to be home with the kids and they can work remotely, offer that to them. Be as flexible as you possibly can with them. In terms of creating more bodies for you to have to work, and more good candidates, I don't know if there's much we can do. We can try to incentivize people to come and work for nonprofits. The other thing to keep in mind too is, one thing I've learned in Harrisburg is anytime you pull out a certain group and try to help them, everybody else jumps in and says, well, wait a minute, why are you helping car dealerships and others? Why are you helping cosmetologists and others? Why are you helping nonprofits and others? So we have good intentions to target assistance. And another one is like, if you're offering tax credits, why are you offering tax credits to these folks? Why aren't you getting tax credits? So it does become, politically it becomes sometimes difficult. But certainly I'm willing to help in any way that I can with regard to legislation. And I think there are some things you can do with your employees. If you care about your employees as much as they care about doing their work for your nonprofit, I think that'll go a long way to help. And in terms of coming up with qualified candidates, everybody is out there. Everybody is looking at that same pool of qualified people. And it is extraordinarily competitive. And that's just the reality. And I think it's a difficult reality, especially for nonprofits. You just can't really compete often on the salaries, but compete on the things you can compete on. Those people are working for you. They came to you for a reason. They came to you for a reason. Support that and support them. And I think that's, at this point, maybe as much as you can do.
And I would just add, one other perspective, and that is that having met with 2 individual groups in the past 2 weeks, looking to increase salaries or increase hourly wages. And we met behind closed doors, and you'll understand why I'm not going to tell you who they were, because I asked them this question. In your heart of hearts, do you believe that giving them more money is the biggest answer? And they said, no, not really. Here's why. Because I believe what we are seeing is that fewer and fewer people view service and that position and doing things for people and wanting to help people is not anywhere close to what it used to be. The jobs that were being presented to me are very tough. They were tough before the pandemic, but somewhere along the line, the pandemic caused people to have a lesser opinion or a desire to what Lou was kind of talking about there, is the desire for people to want to help other people. It's not quite there. I'm not sure exactly why. And that's a scary, scary thought, because you all are here because you care. Maybe it's a generational thing, but you all are here because you are passionate about wanting to help people. And when I asked them that question, they acknowledge that the passion isn't quite there that it used to be. And so for us as legislators, incentivizing and so forth, but one of the things we can't do is legislate a person's desire to want to do a job to help people. We can't. And so we can come up with little tricks and pieces of incentivizing and so forth, but at the end of the day, that's also a part of this equation. So, thank you.
The next question also deals with hiring challenges. Some areas of the Commonwealth have offset hiring challenges by recruiting immigrants to work in hard-to-fill jobs. That strategy has taken place to a limited degree in Blair County's agriculture community. Do you see this as a practical way for us in the nonprofit community to explore solutions to a hiring problem that gets more troublesome each day? So we'll start with you this morning.
I get calls about immigration all the time. They're not positive. I had a guy call me the other day and he said, "What are you going to do about the border?" And I said, "What border?" He said, "The southern border." I said, "The border with Maryland?" I said, "No, the border with Mexico." I said, "I didn't know we had a border with Mexico." I said, "What state has a border with Mexico that you want me to get involved in?" And he said, I thought it was like Texas, and he said, "Florida." And I said, "You mean the Gulf of Mexico? Because Florida, as far as I know, doesn't have a border with Mexico." Then another guy called me and said, "You know, what are you going to do about the ghost flights into Scranton?" I said, "What ghost flights are you talking about?" I said, "Well, Joe Biden's son and Tom Wolf were flying Afghani refugees into Scranton in a secret ghost flight thing." And I said, "Well, it can't be that secret. You know about it." And he said, "Well, a buddy of mine knows about it." And I said, "Well, he knows about it. I know about it. You know also." Look, we, in order for our economy to grow in Pennsylvania and the United States, we need people. We need human resources. I have very little to do, or next to nothing to do with immigration policy. That's up to the feds. That's the federal constitution. We don't have anything to do with that kind of policy. And I will tell you that I haven't had a lot of positive input from my constituents about immigration. Really have. I think I had one call that I can think of in the last 6 months where the person said, "You know, we need to bring in immigrants to help out." And our birth rate in the United States simply can't sustain a growing economy. And the reason that China and India, China's probably equal to us in some respects now economically, and India will surpass us at some point, probably in the next 20 or 30 years, is because of their population. We simply don't have the birth rate that can sustain growth, significant growth in our economy moving forward. So the labor has to come from somewhere. So yes, theoretically, if we can't get it native, if we can't have nativist population growth that will sustain the economy, we have to we have to access those human resources somewhere else, and immigration makes sense. But I will tell you this, our immigration policy in the United States is an absolute nightmare. It's an absolute mess. And nobody in Washington seems to want to do anything realistic or even humane to deal with that issue. And that's the problem. Theoretically, could immigrants perhaps help us solve the problem of our low birth rate? Yes. Politically, do I think that's going to happen? No, I do not. I think that's where we're at, unfortunately.
And Judy, having been in my position previously as the state rep for the 80th and our farm families, immigration and folks who are helping on our farms, they're doing jobs that not many people want to do because they are very difficult jobs. But when I talk to those farm families, they realize that they have to do things in the proper way legally to make sure that their farms will continue to exist. It's their livelihood. They're feeding us. And so from the standpoint of being able to add to our workforce via immigration, I had this chat with Steve McKnight, and he shared with me some information that if you want to try to do this and increase the immigration population in Blair County for the purposes solely of economic development and job creation, it doesn't work. If you want to make that possible because of the social issues, if you will, then being able to do that and develop those folks into being able to fill positions as the secondary ripple effect or the secondary benefit, that is the more successful route that can be done. I don't know about you, but I've had this thought, and I've talked to Lynn about this. When you watch what's going on, and I'm the son of an immigrant that my mom, came over from Wales back in the 50s, and it took her a long time to go through the process. But my heart breaks for those folks. And if I could offer a bedroom and a place to live to a Ukrainian family, and they had something to offer us professionally as engineers or tradesmen or whatever, man, how could you not want to do something like that? But it's more about starting from the social aspect and then moving it into the economic development aspect. Don't do it just to bring people here for jobs. Because there are issues that go along with that, because not all those folks are perfect. They create issues, and being able to acknowledge all of those ahead of time, it would be a process. But this is an all-hands-on-deck problem for us in the United States, and all solutions should be on the table, including this one. Thank you. Oh, yes.
Brittany, could you take this other mic and see if they have some batteries in the back?
Now it works,
Yeah, it turns off.
for now.
It turns off. Thank you.
I agree. This is an all-hands-on-deck situation. I think we, again, have to be creative in what we're doing. I think legal immigration, we have friends that have brought family here. It has taken them, and they're good people. They're good citizens. And they've brought family over. People have been on waiting lists. Their family have been on waiting lists for 12 and 13 years to get here. And they're very hard workers. And I think we need to be opening our minds. As Lou mentioned, this is not a state issue, but it is a workforce issue, and it's something I think we need to look at. Our farmers have been successful in their HUA program and bringing people here for seasonal work. I think there's some things we can do to be creative in that realm.
All right, thank you. The next one is rather interesting as well, about medical marijuana, which is now, of course, legal in Pennsylvania. Does it potentially create a way for people to be more available for work than some other medications that currently remove people from the workforce entirely? So, Jim's first. marijuana. Does it potentially create a way for people to be available for work more than other medications? I'm assuming opiates, because I wasn't at the committee when they decided this, that remove people from the workforce entirely. So if they're dealing with pain issues, medical marijuana can help. Is that a plus as opposed to them being on some sort of medication that they might not be able to work in certain workplaces?
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but because, as we said, it's all hands on deck proposition, I'm aware, and maybe you are as well, that more and more companies aren't even testing for marijuana because they can't afford to turn people away. They don't test, they hire, and with their fingers crossed, they hope they show up for their first day of work. And so from the standpoint of medical marijuana being able to alleviate the use of other substances, other prescriptions, I wouldn't stand in the way of someone's medication between their relationship with them and their doctor about what that doctor prescribes. My only concern is that right now in Pennsylvania, and I'm unaware of anywhere in the country, that we have an actual test that provides for us to know who is using medical marijuana on their way to work. That creates issues of imperateness. So I hope I'm answering your question, but I'm not aware of as many companies that are actually doing pre-hiring tests. They do tests after the fact.
The issues with medical marijuana, certainly I think we need to be open to that, but I think we're still working some of the details out with employers and to be fair to employers as well. So that's something that we continue to work on. The legalized adult use marijuana is something completely different. And I was very pleased to have Judy Rosser testify at a hearing a few weeks ago in my Aging and Youth Committee about some of the dangers of recreational marijuana, most especially for our youth. But medical marijuana is now legal in Pennsylvania, and we do need to kind of work out some of the bugs with that. But I think we need to be open as far as hiring folks and being open to that. But we do need to create some degree of safety for employers as well. So it's a fine line.
Any discussion about marijuana has to turn on the reality that marijuana is a Schedule I controlled narcotic at the federal level. And that raises a whole host of issues, not just regarding employment, but certain industries that are regulated federally. Trucking, railroads. It doesn't matter. You can't work in those industries even if you have a medical marijuana prescription. I was just talking about this morning on the way with my wife. We don't really have the technology yet to test for people who use marijuana. And one of the things you have to understand is when somebody uses marijuana, they consume marijuana, the marijuana actually is out of their system very quickly, but the metabolites that the body produces in response to the presence of the marijuana remain, from what I understand, up to 30 days. So it's very difficult to know, number one, has this person recently used marijuana as opposed to 2 or 3 or 4 weeks ago? And number two, if they have, to what level, if any, are they impaired by that very recent use of marijuana? The technology doesn't exist for us to be able to determine that, whether in terms of law enforcement or whether in terms of the employment world. So it's very, very difficult. If first of all, I think if a person uses too much medical marijuana, they're probably not. But if it does help their condition and they're in an industry where they are not prohibited from using and they're not acutely intoxicated to the point where they can't do their job, I think that the use of it, if it enables them to do their job, is a positive thing. It's a good thing. I understand for certain conditions, post-traumatic stress disorder and other conditions, that it can really be a miracle. It can be a miracle medicine. It can be a lifesaver. But because it's still a Schedule I controlled substance, a Schedule I narcotic, the legal issues that you face as employers are very, very thorny. and very, very complex. And so it makes it difficult. Those people, if they can be productive, can be helpful. But every employee you have that has a marijuana card, if you can employ them, they're not federally regulated, brings with them a set of issues that other employees don't.
I'm going to read this the way it's phrased. So all of you have been legislators for a sufficient number of years. I'm not sure when you hit that cap, but anyway, has your experience made you aware of any other areas of the Commonwealth that seem to be having some positive things taking place in their nonprofit communities that we could tap into or steal? So have you seen best practices, great ideas that other nonprofits are doing in your experience across the Commonwealth and that we might be able to adopt here? Judy?
I'm not that creative. I don't know. But I think your advocacy groups are really very important to you, most especially now. I think, and I was part of a nonprofit group many years ago, and you know, it was different arenas of nonprofit, but it was just interesting to see what fundraisers they were doing, what was working well for them, and you know, we would bring in speakers, and I think that was very helpful to me as a nonprofit professional. So I would say just, you know, I don't know of any creative things that others are doing, but I think through your advocacy groups, I think that's important to continue doing. So that's money well spent, actually.
Yesterday I was meeting with a group that was facing the same issue that the nonprofits are facing. And one of the things that they are planning to do is they're designing a social media campaign, digital advertising on social media to get the word out. And I think that, look, that's the world we live in. I don't like it. I don't pay it a lot. And the reason I get on social media, I do it in the morning before I go to work, because I know I get on Facebook because I'll know what all the nutty people are going to be saying to me all day. So I'm prepared for it. But you know, whether you like it or not, it's a way to touch people. It's a way to access people in their homes, you know, on their phones, in a way that you simply can't do, I don't think, through any other medium. So I think that's a creative way to go, and I think that should be really seriously considered as part of your outreach to this potential pool of employees. Get on the social media. That's where people are at. And if you're going to get people, I think it's a good way to reach out and touch them.
And then to answer the question just a different way, sometimes when you ask that question, maybe we don't realize what we have right in front of us. Maybe we're missing something. And I think about Nate Bowen, who's the general manager of the Crib. Nate, you back there? Thank you, sir. Maybe we don't realize that in this community, we have something that not a lot of other communities have. And when I go to the ballpark and I see the amount of attention that the Altoona Curve gives to nonprofits, not many communities have that. We do, because they made it a priority. And when those organizations do that, those communities around the state should be asking us, what are you doing in Blair County? Well, get a minor league baseball team that really feels like nonprofits are important. I would also say that in meeting with the Pennsylvania State Library Association last week, when the president says that you have the best library folks that advocate for you in Pennsylvania, I'm like, wow. Do you guys know that's how they feel about you? That's amazing. So there are people around the state of Pennsylvania that are looking at us and realizing that we are leading in ways to try and make Blair County better, and that you should be talking to us about our ideas. Now, what they all said is accurate. What other things are being done out there, you know, I've not been made aware of those, but I would also just say, let's make sure we're grateful for the things and the way we do things here in Blair County currently, that maybe others should be copying what we're doing. Thanks.
Are you aware of any sort of category of calls that come into your offices that involve issues that may be resolvable through the efforts of nonprofits? Maybe something that we're not aware of at this point. So, Lou, you're up first on this one.
it happens all the time. People come in my office, either they walk in the door or they contact us all the time. And so my staff is very familiar with the options that are available to folks in the nonprofit sector. And that's one of the things, it's one of the main things we do is when people come in, they come to us first. They come to us, we're either the first place that people come or the last place that people come, my office. We're either the tip of the spear or they've been everywhere and nobody can help them and they come to us. And we frequently, on a daily basis, make referrals of people to nonprofits, community action, wherever, because we know because we deal with the nonprofits constantly, and in the city of Altoona we have a population, many of whom are poor, many of whom have mental health issues. My office is right downtown in the Gables building, so we have our frequent flyers. They come in and they're part of our constituent family, and often we will refer them over and over again to the appropriate nonprofit to help them. So that's one of the first things we consider is where can we get these folks that need this help? Where can we get them to where they can get the help that they need? Priority for us, and it's a constant daily activity for us. So we're very aware of what's out there in terms of the nonprofit community, and we avail ourselves of the nonprofit resources continually. And I think it's one of the most effective ways that we provide help to that population that doesn't have anywhere else to go really in the end. And it's a great feeling. Somebody comes in and they're coming off the street and you can get them into housing, you can get them somewhere they can get help with their utilities, or you get them somewhere they can get help with their mental health issues, and then 6 months later or a year they come back and they look better, they sound better, they're healthier, they're grateful for what you've done. And it's a reason to do this job. When you see their lives get better because you sent them to people who could help them. And you sent them to people who could help them because you knew who could help them. So we do it all the time, and we'll continue to do it.
I can't add anything more to that. When people come to our offices, I would only disagree that we're either first or last. And when people reach out to our offices, in my opinion, it's because they've gotten to the point where they don't know where else to turn. And you all have done a really good job, and my staff does a really good job of acknowledging the resources that are out there because of what you all have done, and others who are not here have done to make them aware of the resources that are there. It's frustrating sometimes because sometimes we don't have an answer because they have gotten so far to the bottom of the rung about what can be done for them. And sometimes they need to be able to figure some things out for themselves as well. But there are so many resources out there, and I feel like our offices are very well equipped to direct them to wherever we can to get them the help they need.
Yeah, I agree. During the pandemic, we had so many calls for unemployment, and the system is totally broken. And we were able to help so many people, not only with their unemployment, but offer other suggestions and other places for them to go for food or housing or whatever it might be. We had a situation where a gentleman had, he lost his wife. She was killed in a tragic car accident. She was the breadwinner for their family. They had young children, and she was a traveling nurse. And so they would go from community to community in a trailer. And she was killed. He had no means of support. They did not have a home. It was winter. It was the most heartbreaking of situations. And I'm like everyone blessed with tremendous staff, and they went to bat for this family. We got them in touch with Christmas Carol. Went through a company, and a company adopted this family for Christmas. It was just, they went to such great needs. But that's when I say you're a safety net, you are a safety net for the community and a place where we can funnel people who really need services. So I thank you all for what you do.
All right. I apologize for taking that call, but I have laser or cataract surgery scheduled for Monday, so they were calling to tell me when. So I knew they were going to talk to me a lot, and I didn't have to answer much. So sorry, Lou, especially since you were trying to talk at the time. And I have to be at that clinic at 9:45, so I'm going to bug out of here as soon as we're done at 9:30. But anyway, the last question is, what questions do you wish we had asked? Or since this is kind of our wrap up, what else do you want to tell the nonprofit community about being a legislator, serving them? So, Jim, you're first.
One of the things that I want to mention is that when I first decided to run, I reached out to a number of people to talk to them, to understand what it would take to be successful. And one of the first persons I reached out to and had breakfast in Perkins with was Ward, because I recognize her wisdom and her experience on these issues is one that was going to lend itself to being a good legislator and successful in a campaign, but also successful in doing what we do. A couple of weeks ago, I got an email that I thought was very proactive, and it was from Holly, and she was determined to make sure that you all got here and you all participated, and to make sure that if you had questions, please give me your questions, Holly, all right?
You're correct.
Yes. You have good leadership in this committee. You have passion in this committee to provide us with the stuff that we talked here about today. And so I can't say that I have any questions, because you all had great questions here today because of the leadership of this committee. And so I just want to acknowledge, those kinds of efforts, and that you should too. Thank you.
I would just say to you all, I appreciate what you do. I thank you for what you do. Your jobs are not easy in any nonprofit. We're here to help you. Please, reach out if there's anything specific that we can be helpful with, or you have creative ideas that we could, take to the legislature. But I'm just grateful for each and every one of you, so thank you all.
I would say avail yourself of the resources that you have. You have your advocacy groups, your industry groups. They're going to have a 30,000-foot overview of everything. They're going to have seen your problems over and over again. Problems you see once, they're going to see every day. Avail yourself of them, and contact us. Contact us if you need help. My office, we don't limit ourselves to people in the 79th Legislative District. We get calls from all over Pennsylvania. We try to help everybody, with one exception, as the senator alluded to. At some point, my office became the unemployment office. And at one point, I think my staff told me about 90% of their work was handling unemployment claims. And we noticed we were getting all these calls from Philadelphia to help with unemployment claims. And my staff said, what's going on? Why do we have all these people from Philly calling? Well, it turns out there was some Facebook group, get help with your unemployment claims. Contact Lou Schmitt's office. Well, okay, we may have to draw the line on this one. But just, contact us. We'll do whatever we can to help you. And if I can't help you, and she knows this is true, I'll send you to Judy.
All right, will you all join me in thanking our legislators? I'm sorry we didn't have time for questions from you all, but you might be able to grab them, talk with them but sincerely, if you have questions, issues, communicate with your legislators. They do want to hear from you. They do their best to try to represent us. Will we have differences with positions they take? Absolutely. But I believe that they truly are doing their best to try to represent the district, and it's our job to make sure that they are doing that on behalf of nonprofits along with the rest of the district. So thank you all so much for coming and participating today. Join the chamber, join the committee. sign up for leadership learning.